Welcome to Brandventures, the podcast that's going to take you into the world of adventurous brands. I'm your host, Gustavo, and I'm going to take you guys on a journey with me to discover new brands that are making a difference in today's market. Join me as we dive into the minds of fearless entrepreneurs behind the brands, discover the secret to their success and how they turn their passion into a profitable business. So sit back, relax, and get ready for an exciting adventure into the world of brand innovation on the Brandventures Podcast. GP5 Productions for adventurous brands. Hey guys, welcome to the Brandventures, the show that's going to take you into the world of adventurous brands. Today we have Noah Imura. Noah is a documentary filmmaker redefining the boundaries between narrative and experience. Through a seamless blend of run and gun filmmaking and cutting-edge virtual reality, Noah crafts immersive journeys that expand our perspective. His latest Odyssey, solo backpacking in the world of virtual reality, takes us across Central and South America in a quest for sustainable happiness. Employing 360-degree cameras, Noah offers viewers an unparalleled virtual reality immersion. Eager for collaborations and at the intersection of virtual reality, Web3, and emerging tech, Noah is an avant-garde storyteller you don't want to miss. So welcome to the Brandventures, Noah.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I could not wait for this interview to happen. I want to ask you a few things. Let's start off with, your filmmaking style is very unique, using 3D cameras and virtual reality. How do you think this approach sets your brand apart in a world so crowded of documentary filmmaking?
Virtual reality and shooting with 360 cameras is not something a lot of people do yet. So it is crowded. If you look at it from the lens of documentaries, it's obviously very crowded. But once you break it down by format, virtual reality is a very new format. People still don't really know what to do with it, including myself. I really decided to shoot in 360 and make VR documentaries because my whole goal when I make films is for people to feel like they were there. I've previously relied on telling a story for you to feel like you're there. But now with, shooting with a 360 camera, and especially when you watch it with the VR headset, you really feel like you're in that scene. So now it goes from telling a story to experiencing a story. And I think when you look at it from that aspect, I think it's a very uncharted territory that I just wanted to discover.
The whole point of documentary filmmaking is to, be inside an experience or something that's happening spontaneously. What actually set you into this journey to go to South America and film all these experiences?
Well, it's twofold. On a personal level, I've always wanted to go travel alone for an undefined amount of time. It's always something that I've wanted to do since I was, younger, when I decided that I wasn't really going to go down the traditional route of getting a job and kind of climbing that, corporate ladder. And it's always something I wanted to do. I was always waiting for the right time to do it, though. And it never seemed like the right time until I realized that the right time never is really going to show up. You're going to decide when it's the right time. Like on a professional level, I wanted to really push the boundaries of 360 filmmaking and virtual reality filmmaking, just because I can see it as a more immersive form of storytelling where I can really bring people into the story. And that's something I really care about when I'm making, documentaries. So that was something that I wanted to pursue. And I was like, I wanted to go personally, might as well make it work from a business standpoint as well.
No, absolutely. I work a lot in the film industry, and I'm into documentaries. I've done a few documentaries, a short form, long form. And the use of 360 hasn't been a thing yet because it's so unique and like so forward, though, it's been out for a while. And I think when I see your stuff, it really just makes so much sense. But talk to me about the challenges of actually making 360 content.
I mean, there are so many challenges, just starting with the fact that I have to carry, there are obviously a lot of cameras. You can start with a small camera, kind of looks like this right here. This is a 360 camera, a small one that shoots in 6K. but it only shoots in 2D.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that wasn't enough. If I'm going to make the investment, might as well get the latest, the best software I can get or the best hardware I can get. So I invested in an Insta360 Pro 2, which is an 8K camera that shoots in 3D. The problem with that is obviously it shoots in 8K. It's a bigger camera, and I go to places that are not necessarily accessible. So a lot of times I have to lug up, a massive camera up, whether it's like, I'm climbing a volcano in Guatemala, like I have to carry it up. And in order for me to tell a story where it's not just like kind of like holding it behind my back, so you see me, kind of like how GTA kind of works,
Yeah.
I actually sometimes have to put down the camera. So I'll have to climb a mountain, put down the camera, climb down the mountain, walk past the camera, walk up the mountain, and then come back to get the camera. So I actually end up, climbing the mountain almost twice. So from a physical standpoint, it can be very hard. And then once you get to the hardware, like the actual, the quality, at the end of the day, 8K sounds like, very high res, but when you watch it, put it on a VR headset, it's 8K over the course of 360 degrees. So the actual density is a lot lower than what you see on your phone. So it doesn't even actually look crisp. That also has to do with the hardware of the headsets themselves, which is still, in development. Even with the Oculus Quest,
Yeah.
like you can see up to 4K, but that's 4K once again around
Yeah.
360. So like the actual quality isn't that good. So there's a lot of tech that still hasn't really developed, but that's also why I see it as an opportunity to kind of figure out how to manage this, and kind of, take it to the next level when everything else kind of comes into play. Because right now I'm sitting on 70 terabytes of footage, and that's just from a year and a half of travel.
I know that's one thing that I struggle a lot, and I'm a filmmaker, but like my main let's say area of expertise is actually post production. So I deal with that, and I get when I go out and shoot, I go shoot max quality, the most amount of stuff that I can get, and then I get back and I'm just like overwhelmed with the amount of media and footage and all the variables that I can come up with. How do you deal with these variables, right? I got so much footage. Where do you begin?
I mean, it's a lot of trial and error. In the beginning, obviously, as I say, I shoot everything in the highest quality. So I'm shooting in 8K 3D, and I was going to edit in 8K 3D, and I go through the workflow, and you end up for a 15-minute file in 8K 3D, stitched in ProRes, comes out to roughly 1 terabyte per file. And that's just for that 150. That's a 15-minute scene. If that's just like one of your raw files, like you can imagine what that project starts to look like. And now you need to start worrying about hard drives, and then you can't be really editing on an HDD drive. It's impossible. You have to work on an SSD. But when you get into SSDs, then everything is very expensive once you start getting into the multiple terabyte SSDs. So a lot of it has just been trial and error. Now I don't post anything in 3D, which automatically cuts the file sizes in half. I'm starting to realize that the limitations in virtual reality are still very prevalent, and I'm not trying to fight those. I can't break those boundaries. That's not my expertise. So I've actually brought down the quality a little bit to make it more like optimized for what is accessible now, but I still have the footage at its original high quality in case, not even in case, like when the technology actually catches up, then I'll be able to deliver, the full force of it. But it took me, a long time to figure that out. There are many days where I'll just stare at my computer and it's just like rendering for 13 hours. And that's just to make a file, like to stitch together the file to then edit. So it's been a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like filmmaking is, for a century almost, it's been, try and error, always pushing the boundary, never having such a like smooth process, right? It's always like chaotic, and first you take that leap and you do the production and you go have fun, but then you encounter problem after problem after problem that you got to break through, and that's what makes it fun also.
You have to enjoy the process, and that's really kind of how I've always looked at everything. That's just kind of how I look at life in general. Like if you enjoy the process, you're never bored, and you're never, there's always something going on that you can feel fulfilled by.
I started following you because you started posting about Venezuela, but I look back at your other videos, and there was one that caught my attention. Is like you were in Colombia at this point, and you heard about Venezuela and what's going on. Can you tell me a little bit more of what was that moment like, and what actually guided you to continue the project in Venezuela?
Every country has their positives and negatives. So it was more of I had to actually think through it, and I did it a little bit of planning. This is the first country I did a little bit of planning.
Yeah.
And by planning, I mean I lined up 3 people who were friends of friends of friends who could host me, because the biggest problem that I saw going in wasn't really the security or that. It was more the fact that there didn't seem to be any hostels. When you don't have a hostel,
Yep.
that's kind of like the lifeline for backpackers, is like you kind of show up at a hostel, you can make friends there, you can get information there. It's like a location that you can go to. The one thing that I did do was kind of try to establish 3 people. Like one was like a friend of college, another was like a guy that I met on a beach in Colombia. He was from Aragua in Cuyagua, so he told me that he has a friend over there, and that was just like what I had, and that's all I really needed. But it definitely was a hurdle. Like mentally, I was like, okay, like if I'm going to do this, I need to actually do this. Like I need to be careful, but that's goes for every country.
Yeah, it's definitely dangerous everywhere you go. But Venezuela is particularly uncomfortable. Not just dangerous, but uncomfortable, and a lot of people are heading out, as you could see from in the borders, and they're moving up to the U.S. or going down to. I bet you're going in, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I saw your videos, I reached out to Noah, and I told him that there was a song that I made with my band called Piojos Intergalácticos, and that I thought would fit perfectly with his storytelling. Can you tell me from your perspective, like how did you get this? How did you receive my approach?
I mean, I've always been. I always don't like to use any royalty-free music or any, like kind of rely on the websites. I've always tried to make something original. When I can find songs that fit a scene perfectly, especially it's from an artist that is from that area, that knows that area, that also comes from that has a personal story to share that relates to the film. Like you can't get any better than that from a music standpoint. It adds such an extra layer that I can't contribute. So when you sent me that, like I was like, it was always in my folder. I was just kind of waiting for the moment for it to for my story to like kind of take me to that alley, and then I knew I would use it there. And actually, because of that, I actually end up asking a lot of people, because I thought it'd be a cool idea to ask, to gather more music. So I just kind of like not really thinking that far ahead. I just kind of posted, being like, hey, like if you're a Venezuelan independent artist that makes music and has like a story or something, send it to me. You know what I mean? Just kind of put my email out there, and I'm still going through the hundreds of
Yeah.
songs that people have sent
I
me.
saw you posted Panasuyo. He's a very very interesting guy. He does very interesting music, Venezuelan style.
Yeah, no,
But
I liked his music as well. I'm making I haven't told people this yet, but I'm making a Spotify playlist with all the songs that I actually end
oh,
up using in the episodes, and that way, at least there's like an outlet that people can kind of go to.
I did my own trip, kind of like yours, to South America, and I went through different places: Ecuador, Peru, Colombia. And when I got back, there was a lot of issues going on in Venezuela, and people were migrating out. So I got to really uh, talk to a lot of immigrants that were crossing the borders, and they were going through like you know awful situations just to get away from the town that we grew up in, and it just stirred so much emotion in me that when I came back, I sat down with Christian, who's the other singer, and I said, we I want to make a song, and I want to talk about this, and I want to say what it feels to be outside looking in, and I want to evoke the feeling of hope in people, and I want to remind them that there's good things that we left behind and that we're taking with us to the next place. So Mientras tanto was that, it was talked about the beach and the good things of the Venezuela offer.
No, I really enjoyed it. I think, in my opinion, I think it fit really well. And it was exactly the feeling that I wanted to portray, especially because I think I followed it up with a bunch of voice messages from people who had memories from Cuyagua. So it just kind of, I don't know, it fit really, really well. Thank you for sending it.
No, I love it. I love it. And that's another thing that's interesting about the style that you're bringing in. It's that you're including pieces that are organic to date. For example, the voice message. It's something that you don't really see in traditional documentary would be, I'll go to this person's house and I'll record a voiceover of them saying something that I kind of guide them through. But these voice messages are they're very genuine. They're coming from somewhere else, and they're bringing you out of the location and putting you inside their own location with their audio and their background noise and all, but actually guiding the story forward. I like how you incorporate those, and it brings a lot of emotions. And you should, everybody who hasn't seen it, you should read the comments, because people are in Venezuela and outside Venezuela are just going wild. They're just saying how much they love your pieces, and how nostalgic they feel, and how glad they're that they see their own country well represented. There's a lot of mystery and misinformation, and there's like a informational war going on in Venezuela. They're actually using media against each other, and there's confusing narratives, and people are just pointing fingers at each other, and they're not really connecting. And I saw that come through. There's people they're saying that you're being paid by the government of Venezuela to put out this content. What has been your reaction with that?
I mean, I've never been accused of taking, money from a government before, but I think in general, media has always been used as a tool of, to kind of either prop yourself up or take the other person down. So I don't think that's anything new. I don't think it's unique to Venezuela. It happens in every country, especially around election time, I would say. And then once I understood a little bit more of the history and like what the country's been going through, I could understand why people would say that. If you have a very personal, like traumatic experience from that country, anything positive kind of attacks and kind of ignores the personal trauma that you've been through. And it's a way of lashing out, I think, which I can empathize with. I've received some people that, sent me like very personal messages of like very horrible things that happened to them. And I could understand why they would be offended, honestly, from a tourist coming to their country and showing the good side of their country. What I can share is my personal experience and do a genuine job doing that. And that's what I focus on, is like telling what actually I saw. I can't go around kind of picking up everyone else's stories to kind of, bring validity to their perspective, because that's not my perspective. Yeah. It's not something that I experienced. I will never be able to replicate that,
Yeah, no, it's a very delicate subject, and it happens a lot in politics. And your experience has been a little bit around politics, and what do you think is the driving force about your inspiration in politics, or how politics affect common day life? Can you tell me a little bit about your past projects and your relationship to politics?
Sure. Young Votes Run America was a project my friend Zen and I did leading up to the 2020 elections, when it was Trump versus Biden. It was the first time in my life that I was old enough, to really see how polarizing the United States was, at least from a media standpoint. It, like, whenever I looked at something, it was very extreme in one side or the other. Like, if you believed in one thing that was associated with one party, then you automatically were assumed to believe in all the other pillars that party stand for. At least that's how it was presented. And at the time, I had just gotten laid off from my job. And I was like, you know what? I actually want to go see with my own two eyes how divided is the United States. So my friend Zen and I basically flew around the country, sometimes drove, sometimes our original plan was to get an RV and drive, but our RV just
Yeah.
never materialized. So we ran around the country for 3.5 months, just talking to people in swing states. We focused on swing states. Those are states where you don't know if it's going to go left or right. And just talking to people our age, mostly, trying to understand how they think. And in conclusion, really where we both kind of ended up was that we were actually a lot more similar than we are different. I think a lot more people are kind of in the middle than they are on the fringes. But the fringes is how both party kind of elevates themselves and takes down the other.
They make more noise.
So that's it. Yeah, it wasn't really a campaign for one side or the other. It was more of I wanted to go see what reality looks like. And that mentality has always been something that I've incorporated in all of my series, just because that's what drives me. I'm a curious person, and I like to know how things actually are, and I want to confirm and talk to those people and see it for myself. And that's really the reason why I went to Venezuela as well, because I wasn't just going to let what other people told me about a country dictate it. Did I make additional preparations to kind of prepare myself? 100%. I don't want to show up at the airport, and get robbed. Although those were stories that I heard, and I was actually ready for that. I purposely backed up everything before I went there, and I was like, you know what? Even if I do get robbed, at least it'll all be material things that can be replaced. Footage can't be. So I had to back up all of that. But besides that, that was the level of commitment I do have when it comes to seeing things with my own eyes. And that's something that I've always had.
I call that risk-taking authenticity. When you go take a risk and you go to a place where everybody tells you no, 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 then there's bound to be something there.
Mm-hmm.
And what you found was gold, because people were really, really responding to that. I want to segue into the medium that you deliver these videos, are social media. How has been your social media experience, and what do you think the benefits are versus the negative sides?
Most people don't want to do what I do, meaning they don't want to go to places where, people hear that it's dangerous. They hear that it's that. People don't want to go there just because they would rather not, they'd rather be safe. I'm just the type of person that enjoys going to those places. Because of that, I obviously capture moments that are very rare, quote unquote, because most people have not captured it with, let's say a filmmaking background. My struggle has always been that I've made all these different types of documentaries, whether it's Young Votes Run America, where I ran around the country for 3.5 months, during the US election, or it's Unwritten, where I was in Ghana, India, and in Los Angeles, kind of diving in on personal stories. The struggle for me has always been distribution. I've never been able to get it in front of enough eyes that wanted to see it. Venezuela, quite frankly, gave me that platform. It was not something I was seeking. It just kind of showed up. But I was really doing the same thing. And that's why I'm happy that I have an audience now that I can share things that I know they want to see, and they align with the things that I want to make. So it's, in that sense, I'm very lucky to have been able to stumble upon this organically. If you're a U.S. citizen, you can't go to Venezuela without getting a visa, which is a massive process. That I still get many, many messages about that all the time from people. They're like, "How did you get a visa?" I'm like, "I actually didn't need to use one." I'm from Japan, so I have a Japanese passport, and it's honestly probably one of the best passports in the world. I think you can get into the most countries without a visa, including Venezuela. So I just showed up. The customs guy looked at me like, "What are you doing here?" And he looked at me, and he actually asked me. He said, "Where's my gift?" And this was something that I had heard ahead of time. So I was like, "Oh, the first thought when I entered Venezuela was the rumors are true. I'm about to get everything robbed by immigration." That's what I thought.
Not the camera, thank you.
But he was just kind of he kept a straight face the whole time. It's not like he was joking, but he was just enjoy.
Because let's say the state and the governmental institutions have really established a bad relationship with the people. It's kind of that the angry dad that's always pissed off at everything. And so it trumps the negative, trumps sometimes the positive. But let me ask you this. Tell me a little bit about your other project, Unwritten.
It's all started. I was going through like a 2-year creative slump. I wasn't making any films for myself. So I got a job at a production company in Hollywood. And I used to stay really late after, everyone left. That was my time to like continue my own production work at the office because no one else was there. And I became friends with a custodian because he was always staying there late, cleaning everything. He was from Mexico. But one day he asked me if I would make a video about what he does for work so he could show his friends and family back in Mexico what he does in the United States. And that film made like half of my like the people at my work cry. It was like a 3-minute film and it made like half of them cry. And I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. There's something I can work on. So then I wanted to do that as a actual job for I wanted to be a part of my work. So I gave myself, during winter break, I gave myself 2 weeks, and my friend had invited me to go to Ghana. So I went to Ghana and I told myself, I'm going to go for 2 weeks. I'm going to find 2 people that inspire me. I'm going to make 2 personal documentaries about those people. And that's what I did. I went to Ghana, made those 2 films, came back, showed my boss. I was like, hey, I can do this. Like you can send me to any country in the world. I can come back with a film. Like I didn't know any of these people ahead of time. And for the actual job, I was already scheduled to go to India. We had a client in India. So while I was working on, the actual client work, I convinced my boss. I was like, hey, you remember that thing I did in Ghana? Like I can do that here in India as well. Give me 2 weeks. I'll find 2 people and make you 2 films. And he was like, sure, fine. Like go do it. So that's what I did. And between those films, that was 5 films that I've mentioned so far. And then there was another man that I made a film about in Hollywood. He was this was during the height of like the whole BLM movement in Hollywood, and there was a lot going on. So I wanted to understand what was actually happening. So I found someone that was very involved. Just kind of made a personal story about him, and he introduced me to somebody else that he was like, hey, this guy needs a lot of attention as well. So I made that film. So that's really a very organic kind of route, and that's why it's called Unwritten, because I didn't know anything ahead of time. Like everything was unwritten.
I love it. Can you tell me from your perspective, how impactful are these, personal stories that you make for them?
I mean, I actually include the reactions of the person that I made the film about at the end during the credits. So you can honestly go look at them for yourself. I think they speak for themselves. But I think it just shows how it humanizes everything, everyone too. I mean, a custodian, you might not even look twice. If you're at a job, like, you're in your own office doing your own work, the custodian's over here, like there's such a disconnect, even though you're in the same space. But when you humanize them by telling their story, that started a whole new conversation. Like now he used to come into the office, like we had a little snack stand that like he would, like always come by, we'd share food, like hang out. And like when he left, a new girl came in and I made a film about her as well. And that was like it was like the kind of the sequel to that mini story. And, I actually ended up raising some money for her to be able to pursue her personal dream of becoming an architect. So that was, fulfilling and impactful in that way.
There's an interesting theory about how reality is simulated. The more you look at something, the more it unfolds itself. You essentially are the creator of reality, right? If you look at an image, that image was taken in a point, a place in time by someone at some point, but you can still look at that image and find new things as time goes by, right? That happens a lot in filmmaking. You've captured a moment, and that's why we love filmmaking so much too. You capture that moment and then you find nuances that lead stories, and you thread the best story that you can find within that image, right? And I think that you do that wonderfully because of your sensitivity and your ability to thread that story. Do you have any advice for people that are starting out in filmmaking and want to either create a film or they want to show the world a story?
I would say just do it. I think the biggest hurdle that I went through when during my 2-year creative gap where I didn't make a single film for myself was not doing anything. And you don't need any fancy equipment. Like, you really don't. Like, sure, I'm using all this virtual reality 360 cameras. Like, that happens to be the route that I'm going down now. But I started making music videos with my friends on my roof in Tokyo with an iPod Touch. You know, that's where I started. And I vividly remember like picking up an iPod Touch, being like, there's a camera on this that shoots in 1080p. That's all I needed to know. You know, like everything else was like just me putting together, like learning how to make things. The key was that I put it out, and like having other people watch it is how you kind of go through this process of what you enjoy, and because you feed off of other people's reactions as well. It's not everything, but it definitely adds to the experience. Like when I make a film and someone else, you know, starts crying over it, you know, like I've evoked an emotion in somebody, and that can be gratifying, especially if it's something that you want to, like, let's say, inspire somebody to do something, or other people just listen to someone else's life and that inspires somebody else to do something. And I've been in a very fortunate position where I've received many messages, especially earlier on when I was making films, from people, especially on YouTube, being like, hey, like, I watched one of your films and, you know, I decided to start making films myself. Like, that for me is like, that's a life achievement for me. Like, if someone else does like create something because of you, like, that wasn't my intention, but that's a side effect of you pursuing exactly what you want to do. So I would just say, just create. There is nothing more valuable than actually making something and putting it out. And that's kind of gotten me to where I am. And I think that helps shape my authentic perspective.
Absolutely. One of the things that motivates this podcast is everybody has a story to tell. And it's in those nuances, those imperfections, and those challenges that you really are able to connect emotionally with people. And that in turn is going to open the doors for either your business, your personal growth, your career, to unfold in the path that you want to go to.
No, definitely. I mean, I think even going even further, I would dissect it even more and say, I genuinely believe that every person has something, at least one thing, that makes them special. They might not know what it is yet, but everyone has something. It might just be a soft skill. It might just be, you know how to listen to people. That might be your super skill. But if you can turn any of those skills, or any of whatever that factor that makes you special, you can turn that into you could dedicate your whole life to it and actually create probably the largest impact that you can as an individual. I'm lucky to have been able to figure out what that is, at least in my current moment. It might change over time, but for my lifetime, up to now, it's been just, you know, I understand, I can listen to people, and I have the skill to listen and recreate what I saw by telling a story to other people to make them feel like they were there. And that's why I'm into documentaries, and that's why now I'm in virtual reality documentaries, because now I can bring you there. And I think that's the direction that I want to go in. But, you know, it might change over time, but I genuinely think that everyone has something.
Awesome. Well, Noah, thank you so much for being a part of this and including me in one of your stories. So I wanted to pay back and include you into one of my stories.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you for the work you're doing. And I want to be connected with you and show people what the work that you do. We're already working together, so I love that. Can you tell people how they can find you and watch your videos?
I mean, the easiest is you can just type in, where is Noah, without an H. Noah without an H. Just where is Noah? You can type it into a browser. You know, my YouTube channel, my Instagram will probably show up. But everything is just, where is Noah? And that's the most common question that I always receive from my friends. Like, I would always get a message being like, where is Noah? Like, where are you?
Where's Noah? You just ask Google, where's Noah? And he'll show up. I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today's episode. Make sure you tune in and check all the prior episodes we've been doing at the Brandventures, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Noah. GP5 Production for Adventurous Brands.